Greetings, fellow Empyreans. I am Ashtarothi, the voice of New Eden, and it is October 15th, YC126, and this is the Eve Universe Show. Welcome, welcome, welcome. How's it going, guys? Settle on in. We've got some stuff to talk about. I think my mic might still be turned up a little bit too much. Is that better? Is that worse? It's not that much, so you probably don't even notice. Is it? Maybe it's just me yelling that peaked it. Okay, that looks fine. All right. Either way, we do have quite a bit to talk about today. I originally posted that I thought that this was going to be a shorter stream, but as things get together, I don't know. It could go either way. We do have a lot of little things to kind of cover, and there is a whole bunch of tinfoil today in a lot of different ways, so get ready for that. I do want to make sure that we circle back. I've been wanting to talk to you about this for like a week now. I had my I did my interview with Frozen Fallout for the CSM. And in that interview, I asked him his feelings about Emanation Lock, not knowing what they were. And his answer really got me to thinking. And I got to tell you guys, I think I've changed my mind on Emanation Lock. So I do want to argue with the point to you guys and kind of give you guys my why I think that the Emanation Lock makes a lot of sense and how this relates to everything else that's been going on when it comes to the setup for Revenant. But for now, we got to talk about a couple of things. First of all, there has been issues with Stargates. Today, this morning, there was an issue with people not being able to see Stargate or selecting Stargates and traveling between systems. And obviously they got it resolved by now, which was what, it took them like 3 hours to resolve it. And that's fine. Except if we scroll down to the 8th, we see there were disconnects and stuff, but we also see, where is it? On the 7th, I guess. We're investigating reports of issues with logging into the game and in-game issues related to UI and Stargates. So there were actually reports on the 8th on like Reddit and whatnot talking about how Stargates were completely not even visible on the overview and all this stuff. And again, it got fixed after 3-4 hours. But then today, we're getting it again. So what does this mean? First of all, I would say that be careful out there. Obviously, if these things are going wrong, take just a little bit of extra caution. If something like a Stargate not being there when you jump through a system or something like that is going to be that critical to your problems, chances are it won't be. There's kind of only a few situations that can come to mind where that would be a serious, anything besides like just a pretty big inconvenience. But it's just something to keep in mind that this is not only something that has happened, but it seems to be something that is happening, i.e. it continues, like it's happened more than once now. Much like the local chat thing we had reoccurring problems for months back in the day. Now, a couple things I do want to say about this. First of all, I don't remember a time in which this has ever happened before, where, like, Stargates in particular, but really any sort of normal warpable object is just disappearing for some reason or can't be utilized. I imagine, so here's my tinfoil, okay? The thing I've got about it is we are coming up on an expansion, right? And prior to an expansion, we see a lot of work done in the background that will potentially bear fruit in the expansion or just past the expansion or whatever. So if anything, I see this as a sign that CCP is working on infrastructure, but there is a very the speculation that this could be related to some sort of feature to dynamically turn on and off stargates has a lot of potential. And a lot of that potential comes to this structure that we see behind us, or more importantly, the one that we don't see here at the bottom of the circle. The atom is, so if I can remind you guys, the siege of Zarzak began on the 9th, and that is when Emanation Lock came into play. But the lore behind this was that when the drifters attempted to access Zarzak, the Zarzak's automatic defense mechanisms triggered and constructed an artificial event horizon around Zarzak, preventing all but very specific signals from breaching it, not allowing the drifters to come through. They actually warped space and time to fortify themselves. The drifters tried to use siege engines to warp space and space-time in order to be able to break in, but of course, we blew them up when they tried to do that, so they failed. Now, apparently, this whole thing and the decloaking, immediately after that, this structure starts decloaking. There's a lot of mystery around it. The Rada-Oki have a caravan to try to get some materials, stolen materials, secret stolen materials that are part of a facility that hasn't been accessed for like a decade. They steal this product, they bring it through the caravan, players blow up the caravan, and we learn about the atom. So that atom is returned to Zarzak by some players, and it was announced in the lore that we read yesterday that that atom is critical to make, like, that is the key to all of this working, whatever that means. And it seems to be critical to this structure that is decloaking, so much so that they have now placed this Raitaru here to collect as many atom as they can, so that way they can do something. Okay? So the thing is that the atom itself as an object, we can see its description says, left behind by ancient Jovian explorers, the original purpose of this artifact is a mystery. A scan suggests that it has been inactive for centuries, yet even in this state, it subtly warps the surrounding fabric of space-time. Though non-functional, this device can still provide researchers valuable insight into Jovian technology. The Deathless Circle offers unique trades for atom in Zarzak, while the Society of Conscious Thought will pay for any delivered to their stations. So, Society of Conscious Thought and Deathless are very interested in this object. Even though it is basically shut off, it is warping space-time around it. And in the lore, in the post that was talking about this, the room that the atoms were stored in, the secret room in the Thucker facility, had, like, the physical construction of the room had been warped and twisted by gravitational forces. So there is not an insignificant warping of space-time around these atoms, which seems to be interesting, corresponding to the warp in space-time around Zarzak itself. So does this mean that the Deathless is going to give Nullsec or something the ability to construct one of these devices in their own system, so that way they can fuel it and turn off stargates that lead to their system for some sort of security? I'm not saying that, but I don't know, right? Like, let me know what your alternative theory for these things, or do you just think that these are unrelated topics? They're probably unrelated topics, for the record, or it could be as simple as this: the act of trying to create emanation lock has entered a regression that is causing stargates not leak up correctly sometimes, and that has led to them like appearing as offline when they're not there, or something like that. So, the Zarzak's first empire, thanks to reveals today. What reveals today? So, yeah, it is worth noting that the third Jovian Empire does have access to wormhole generation on a very like easy level. The Uli cruiser, the Jovian cruiser, has the ability to create wormholes. So, you know, manipulation of space-time is something that all of the branches of Jovians have been able to do. What's up, Dutch Gunner? So, yeah, the point is, if you don't see a Stargate, don't panic. There are problems right now. Just report it or whatever. They have been resolved for today, for now, but that was the second time they've happened. There is fun tinfoil to be had to speculate on what this could mean for the expansion, but to be realistic, they've already given us the high-level overview of the expansion, and historically, every single time I try to be like, oh, look, there's a hint that there's this extra thing that has never actually happened. So keep that in mind. That being said, let's move on. Yeah, shutting down existing gates could lead to even more diversity in nullsec geography. Yeah, and that's the thing, is that it could very well be, like, over time, CCP has worked on making a more and more dynamic universe. So the ability to turn on and off gate connections in a more sensible way, like they tried that with the gates to Othanoon, right? Maybe they learned some things from those gates, and now this is like they're working on iteration 2 of that, right? And it just so happened that when you push it to Tranquility, it doesn't, or like when they try to run it on the server, it messes things up. Now, it is interesting to note that while there was a big post on Singularity 33 or an hour and 33 minutes ago, Singularity was updated an hour and 33 minutes ago with, among other things, basically mirroring Tranquility. I haven't seen... My theories are just as weird, so too early for me yet. Yeah. Hey, man. Like I said, I'm not saying it's true. I just think it's an interesting idea. However, I also look back and saw, like, well, there was the Tranquility patch this morning, but there wasn't one that matched for 7. Well, maybe there was, actually, if it was 7 days ago. Well, we have this patch here. There wasn't... I find it interesting that around the time that they said that they were resolving the issue, there was an update to Singularity. My suspicion is that they tested a fix, then they posted it to Singularity that required basically a full mirror and tested it really quick and then deployed it. That's my theory. I don't know. But yeah, right now, Singularity has most of the things have been mirrored with Tranquility, except for some of the base files. So whatever that, whyever that is, it could just be that they're prepping for mass tests. That's the thing. As we get closer and closer to an expansion, it gets kind of this way. Now, I will admit that right now we have a lot of speculation, because what we're going to be getting is probably a dev blog every week for the next several weeks as we learn about each piece of the expansion, right? We got, we have the new Deathless ships. We have the new structure and sites. We have the new corporation tools, and we have the new Skinner improvements. So like that's at least 4 dev blogs there. Plus they've got Vanguard stuff. So right now we're in like the least knowledgeable moment. So make sure to clip this stream and tell me how wrong I am in like a week. Yeah, but on that note, let's go ahead and move on to another piece of information. We did actually find out a little bit of pretty significant information about the expansion that's coming, and a CSM member had to sadly go down in order to get it to us. No. So what seems to have happened is one of the CSM members, a guy who goes by Alcoholic Satan, who was also running for CSM 19, went on the Horde Discord and kind of conducted, my understanding was a bit of a Q&A in order to try to flesh out some of the information or answer some questions about Revenant. This is not something that is unheard of before. I mean, CSM members coming through and clarifying stuff, even early on like this, isn't completely unheard of, but CSM members are held under a pretty strict non-disclosure agreement. And so if you are CSM, you need to be extremely aware of what information is public and what information is not public. And sadly, it seems that as he said in his own post, Alcoholic Satan got a little bit too excited and gave a little bit of some information that was not public yet. And he, according to the CCP post, he came forward about it. So while they are, in fact, they are going through with the consequences of his decisions, i.e., he's been removed from CSM 18. He will no longer be allowed to run for CSM 19, and he is banned for 60 days from playing the game because of this. Now, obviously, they're not going to try to replace his seat. We're literally in the middle of the election. It would be completely silly to try to figure out who would replace his seat. So we're just going to have an empty seat on the CSM 18 until the election is over. And obviously, Alcoholic Satan is not one of the candidates anymore. That is the practical effect. However, the Sissy update is for the mass test tomorrow. Awesome. Is there a mass test tomorrow? Is that going to be on the forum? Should I go look that up real quick? Or if you want to DM me the link, I can pull it up real quick. So here are the links. Although now I feel nervous talking about it with Tony here, but I mean, we're past the Rubicon. All right, so there are a few there are a few things to note, or a few important points in this CSM leak. Oh, hold on. Let me pull this up first. So there is a mass test on Singularity where they are testing that everything is still working as expected when it comes to damage in Eve. Okay, so again, this hints to me exactly kind of what they're working on with one of the core features, this actually all ties in. One of the core features that is coming in the game, in the expansion, in fact, probably the most expansive, expanding out the functionality of EVE Online as a whole, is the fact that Revenant has a new weapon system being introduced. It is going to be the first damage over time system, or dot system, introduced to the game. And this suggests that chances are in the background, they've had to make some changes, or at least they have added to the combat system to enable the dot, right? And in order to prevent issues, you, of course, want to test to make sure everything is working, everything that you would expect to still be working is still working. You don't want to, I don't know, patch up something and make Stargates disappear or something like that. Who knows? But so that's what they're testing tomorrow. You can switch your browser. You can switch your launcher to Singularity by hitting the little gear. No, in the lower right-hand corner, there is a it says tranquility with the number of players. You can use that to switch to singularity. If you don't have that there, you can go to the gear in the top right, and then is it still here? Never mind. I don't think you need to do that anymore. It should just be down there. So yeah, you do get are there? Oh, I guess there's no statement about the rewards. They don't explicitly say that there's rewards for this one, but in almost every mass test that we've been part of, like they give you like 1,000,000 SP or something like that on the singularity, right? When you do it, I don't know if that's going to be continued. Oh, might be. So there. Okay, we don't know exactly if or what the reward is, but I will say that I've never heard of a mass test on singularity where there wasn't some sort of reward for participating. So tomorrow at 1700, if you can be on singularity, there's instructions down below. You can do /move me in any chat in order to move yourself to a different system. There is more information about singularity and all that stuff on the website. Make sure to participate in that. But speaking of damage over time abilities, that is one of the things that we learned a lot of from the leaks. So, all right. The first is mercenary dens. So mercenary dens were one of the things I was most confused about when it came to what they were for, right? And this tells us that basically a mercenary den is a site that is effectively similar to a crab beacon, all right? A crab beacon is a new kind of a device that was introduced within the last couple of years in order to give players capital level content, okay? So the way a crab beacon works is you drop this thing down and it summons a whole bunch of rogue drones to come at it over and over again, right? And you just have to kill all the rogue drones and effectively protect it until its timer finishes, and bing, it spits out a whole bunch of prizes and rewards and mutaplasmids and stuff. So, you know, very successful. But one of the things that they introduced with it is the fact that every system has like I can't even remember what it's called, like frequency disruption. I can't remember, but basically the more crab beacons you do in the same system in a repeated point of time, eventually it like shuts off your ability to do crab beacons. You can only do so many crab beacons in a span of time in a specific system. So this is stage 2 of that, or like an iteration on this concept. So we now have a device that you put down and it runs for a period of time, and who knows what is actually involved in that period of time. But the consequence for anchoring them, too many of them, is that it will lower the workforce output on that planet for some time. And then by running them, you get the stuff as a reward to take them to Zarzak. So while we don't have all of the details, I think we can pretty much know that this is definitely not something that like some person performing an incursion into nullsec will do. This is a new activity for people in nullsec to do, right? This is something to do. This is a way to utilize your space in a different way. If you've got more planets with personnel than you have need for, then you can use those planets to turn them into deathless doodads and turn them into Zarzak. One of the interesting things about this proposal is this means that people that don't live in Zarzak, that are not part of the faction warfare stuff, now has cause to be interested in Zarzak, like itself, as opposed to like the highway of it. Interference, that's what it is. Frequency interference, I'm pretty sure is what it was called. Oh yeah, I haven't covered the logs from that's another thing I can cover today. So, that's a thing, and we'll talk later a little bit when I talk about the emanation lock, about my feelings about the skyhook stuff and this stuff and how it all works out. So the next thing is the dot will be able to be used on NPCs. So it's not a player versus player only thing. Now, the most interesting, the most revealing piece of information, in my opinion, out of this entire leak is the next question right here. Will the dot stack? No. Now, I think that this is the big balancing factor of this, right? This is a very powerful tool. As the next thing says, the dot will still apply even if you warp off. There is no escape. So, like, this is an incredibly powerful tool. Now, I've jokingly said that, like, every weapon in EVE Online is effectively a dot because, you know, as long as it's running, it just does damage every so often, you know, as opposed to hitting a button every single time. But this means, you know, like, that's still not the same thing because this dot will continue to apply even after the source of the dot has been removed. And that's pretty strong. And the idea that that could happen on like an N+1 scale would be probably, almost certainly, extraordinarily broken. Because let's think about what dots actually do from a game mechanic point of view, okay? When you're doing damage, or when you're talking about like damage versus health in a video game, you have, you know, like, there are kind of, to balance the damage, you have how much damage each strike does versus how fast it goes, right? This is true for almost every game with differences between weapons, right? From Dark Souls to Warcraft to EVE Online, there are big, heavy weapons with slow swings that do big amounts of damage, and you have lighter, faster weapons with faster swings that do lighter amount of damage. But when you do the math, they both do roughly the same DPS, which means basically one group front loads all of their damage, right? Well, either front loads or back loads, depending on whether or not it's a hefty swing or a thing with a cool off, right? Artillery versus blasters is a good example for this. Actually, kind of, because they're two different damage platforms. But artillery versus railguns are a good example for this, right? Like, ultimately, for them to be balanced, then they do roughly the same damage at roughly the same range, blah, 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 blah. Like, there are some differences between them for various reasons, but, like, the fact that one goes faster or the fact that one goes slower isn't the thing that makes one go higher or lower DPS, right? A railgun shoots very much faster than an artillery gun, but it does less damage per shot. So in the end, they're kind of roughly equivalent. However, that means that the alpha or upfront damage of the artillery weapon is higher. So to put it a different way, if you have a 6-second cycle time and you shoot, you have done 6 seconds of DPS in one bam. And then there's 6 more seconds before you can do it again. And that's how the DPS is balanced, right? So when it comes to dots, though, dots in video games have an interesting trade-off, right? The idea is you will do less damage, but like less damage right away, but that damage will actually trickle in. It usually ends up being a bigger amount of damage, but it takes some time, right? So like if you have your dot that lasts for 20 seconds, then in the end, it'll do quite a bit of damage, but you know, it's going to do significantly less if they die in 3 seconds or whatever. Like you've actually burned over, you know, 3/4 of the damage that could have come from that thing. So in EVE, those two things together means that dots, technically speaking, have a very high alpha on damage. Now, it's not high alpha insofar as, like, logistics can't deal with it. It's actually much easier for logistics to deal with than upfront blast, boom damage. But if you think about it, once that dot is applied, then that damage will be done eventually. So, and this suggests that it's percentage based. Now, I don't know where it does its damage. I assume it's not just to hull or whatever, but who knows, maybe at this point. But the idea is that, like, well, percentage base and stacking would be absolutely insane. But the problem with a dot in general is the fact that, like, if you could just have an entire wing come in, hit a dot, which has an instant application, and then leave, you've effectively done damage for a period of time. You've done 30 seconds worth of damage, or however long the dot works, in 1 second, and then just got off the field, right? That would be huge. So they can't really do that, right? But the problem is that if you don't allow them to stack, then the relationship between dots and fleet size and hulls and whatnot becomes very, very skewed, right? Like, could a cruiser even apply meaningful damage? I don't... Because, like, the percent-based thing seems to suggest that they want it to scale up to bigger ships. But that still feels very crazy to me. I'm going to have to wait for the actual details about this. But the biggest note here is that the dot doesn't stack, which makes this, I think, the first weapon system. I guess you could argue that bombs are kind of this way to a certain extent, because if you fire off more than a few at a time, they can blow each other up. But, like, I feel like this is one of the most resistant to N+1 mechanics that they've introduced in a long time. This means that, like, rather than having a fleet of these guys, you'll want 1 or 2 of these guys in support of a larger fleet. Now, the real question is, if it is percentage-based, how does that relate between battlecruisers and destroyers? And will signature radius impact the amount of damage that it does? But that's all information that we'll hopefully get within the next couple of weeks. Yeah, spreading dots around effectively across an entire fleet will be absolutely critical to messing with Logi, for sure. Having one of them, yeah, bomb cleanup could be really good. That's the thing, is that, like, I mean, I could see somebody sitting there and applying one to everything, and then you just be watching to see which one gets low enough, and then blap it real quick, like have the alpha switch over to it. But it's going to be really interesting to see where people go with this. Oh, yeah, it's probably percentage based. I think what I think that means is that, like, if you fire a battleship weapon at a battleship, it does battleship level damage. But if you do battleship at a frigate, then it'll do frigate damage. Because if you have any sort of numbering scale on a battleship level and you apply it to a frigate, the frigate just explodes. So if it's percentage based, then it won't just, like, extremely explode the frigate. But again, we need more details. So, yeah, Dank leaks. So let me know what you guys think. What about my interpretation? Thoughts about the situation. One of the things that I'm kind of torn on is, of all of the people that have ever kind of gotten this kind of, well, so NDA breaches are actually surprisingly rare in EVE. However, they do happen. The last time was like almost a decade ago. But when he wrote his thing about how he would like to run for the CSM in the future, I was like, that's kind of scummy. But then when I read the post by CCP, he came forward. It seems, for lack of a better word, amicable. You know, this is like, he messed up. There's consequences for messing up. But we will see if it has, like, the ability. Technically speaking, he's only barred from running for CSM 19. So we'll see what happens next time. But yeah, I I'm still of the opinion this is a sort of heavy bomber, as the percentage will do a lot to caps. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, like that could just be the other way, is that this is a boss, designed to be a boss killer. So it allows like a frigate or a destroyer rather, or a battle cruiser, apply significant damage to caps, which is pretty funny if you think about it. They're giving me Vorton vibes where they're going to struggle to make them feel fun or fair. To be fair, when they came out with Vortons, they were like, we have no idea whether or not this is going to be good or not, but it's interesting, so we're trying it. All right. Moving right along, I think. All right, let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. All right. Okay. While I am not alone in my positions, I have been probably one of the most vocal opponents against a lot of the changes that have been done to Zarzak thanks to the null blocks. The addition of bubbles into Zarzak made Zarzak nearly inhospitable. The only reason why we got away with it before was because Zarzak was so unpopular because of the fact that nobody wanted to live there because of the threat to it, that it wasn't really worth messing with people with bubbles in Zarzak very often. And we really only saw it a few times to take out, like, I think it was fraternity fleets as they were traveling through Zarzak, which ultimately was what the nullsec people wanted. I stress that, like, being able to take out an entire fleet with one Dictor bubble seems a little bit... They wouldn't be happy if it happened to them. But... So now we have Emanation Lock. And my knee-jerk reaction to it, fine, it's good that we have gotten rid of the bubbles, but I was really not a big fan of this solution because as a person who lived in Zarzak, I valued all of the different functionality of Zarzak and the ability to get from one low sec to the other low sec, or one null sec to, getting between them was very convenient. And as I pointed out in my video, the ability for people to join the Angel Cartel or Garistus was made significantly more straightforward by being able to just go through Zarzak to go one more jump to your respective nullsec systems, sign in, and then come back, and then you're now part of it. But if you're coming from either Turner or Alsavoinen, you'll have to wait 6 hours in order to go through it, which isn't going to work for people that are just trying to join it for a little bit. Now, you can go around. There are other ways to join the militia, as it was pointed out, but that was a lot of my big concern. However, I had an interview with Frozen Fallout that was posted about a week ago. He's running for the CSM. He's a faction warfare candidate. And as part of that, I asked him about Emanation Lock. Now, first of all, he didn't. I had to tell him what Emanation Lock is because I'm the only nerd that actually knows the real name for all these mechanics. But after explaining it to him, he gave me... So, like, I asked him that question without knowing what his answer was going to be, assuming that as a person that lived in that area, he would be rar, GERD, nullsec. Why is nullsec messing with other people's stuff? Just because they want their way, just like me, right? But he had a much more nuanced answer that really challenged me quite a bit. You can go watch the interview if you want to see that whole thing, but it got me to thinking. And I strive to reframe this situation for you guys. And let's look at it from a game design perspective, okay? From a game, so you have different user stories, use cases, however you want to call it, right? You develop like, okay, well, whenever you're developing any kind of software or any kind of anything you're designing, you like to think about like, okay, who's going to use this and how are they going to use it? So that way we can anticipate the way that different users use things, and therefore we can support the different ways that users use things, right? So, somebody might go to Facebook to check in with their friends. They might go to Facebook to post news. They may go to, a user who is a grandmother who is staying connected with their family is a different user case than a brand manager who is managing their social media feed. But they are both users of Facebook. And so the people who are designing the tools of that make Facebook work need to keep both of those users in mind and make sure it does what both of those users need to do, right? So from that perspective, we can think of Zarzak as a certain amount of like functionality for different user cases, okay? So the thing that got me was there are two kinds of people who use Zarzak. People that live in Zarzak and people that don't live in Zarzak but exploit its usefulness, okay? And of the people that live in Zarzak, there are two kinds of people. There are people that fight for the pirates and people that don't. They might be faction warfare pilots. They might be whatever, right? So the problem is that nullsec is unhappy because of the way that this deals with power projection. Now, they could just push back. They could double down. They could be like, no, get used to it. Whatever. That was an option that they could do. But, like, each person at least has some sort of say on their own sandbox. And there is absolutely a case to be made about the impact of Zarzak when it comes to navigation from a null block consideration. So ultimately speaking, it was only the user case. Like, how do you deal with the use case of null blocks using it for a highway without disrupting any of the use cases of the people that live there? And that's what got me to thinking about, like, well, okay, I can be mad that we lost functionality to Zarzak, but do I actually use that functionality, right? Now, it was very in my face because the event required doing stuff on both sides of the gates. Therefore, you couldn't move between. But I even noted at the time that that's arguably a good thing because that forces trade between the two sides and kind of makes it 4 different isolated zones, which is actually kind of cool, right? So that's not necessarily it. If I am going into Zarzak, or if I'm going into the war zone, I'm probably using the shipcaster, which doesn't have anything to do with emanation lock. If I go out, if I go out from either direction, that doesn't have anything to do with emanation lock. It only affects something coming in. So if I'm coming in as a pirate, I can go out the way I came, or I can go out through the shipcaster. If I need to go from one side to the other side, like, that might be a thing, but I can't really think of a time besides, oh, I just want to get into angel space more conveniently or whatever, right? Which even then, if you just hang out in Zarzak all day, chances are you don't have an emanation lock. You can just go to whichever direction you want, right? The thing that got me was this idea that emanation locks you to the same gate. And I think that this is the critical piece because it doesn't disrupt logistics, which is the biggest use case that would be a problem to disrupt within Zarzak, right? So if you're hauling things in, if you've stashed a bunch of stuff in Turner and you're moving it into Zarzak and you're going back and forth, you can do that indefinitely because your emanation lock is to that gate. who's bringing things, who has to pick up some stuff here and then pick up stuff over on the other side, especially since Alice Avoidant doesn't even have a fucking structure to put things in, or station. So, like, boy, yeah, I hope the yes, it would be allowing people to just join from the Angels or the Garistas from inside of the Fulcrum would definitely fix it. But my point is that I think that the Emanation lock is low-key genius. It manages to disrupt the use case that NullSec was mad about without disrupting the use cases that the pirates use Zarzak for. The value of Zarzak has not been diminished for those who live in Zarzak. In fact, it has only been improved because now those who do not live in Zarzak but wish to exploit it for their own ends cannot do so. One of the biggest problems that we have, like in faction warfare and whatnot, is when you have something that has its own internal like reward system and things to buy into, but yet someone on the outside can exploit it. They don't give a shit about your little internal whatevers. They just want their thingy. And so they're going to ruin things for everybody. That's when you get problems. When you incentivize something so much that people that don't care about it want to do it because of the thing that it provides, you have run into a problem. That is why we have a problem in pirate faction warfare, because the people that are joining pirate faction warfare don't give a shit about the death list. They only care about getting pirate BPCs, and therefore there's no incentive for them to actually care about the major objectives. In fact, there's no incentive for them to work with anyone. So, arguably, removing the purpose of Zarzak that caused people outside of Zarzak to be interested in exploiting the value of Zarzak is arguably a good thing for those who wish to live in Zarzak. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. Did I do it? Did I convince you? Now, I was also thinking about this. I was also thinking about this from the perspective of skyhooks and whatnot, and Revenant and all these things, and even the information that we got about the new sites, and like in the same notion, the issue that I think that we might run. It's a big if. Which part is if? Which is the big if? I like I said, I don't see it getting in the way of people that want to live or use Zarzak for itself, or even support Zarzak's market. That's the thing I care about the most, to be honest. I just want to buy my ships in Zarzak without having to worry about anything. But the fact that NPCs, or sorry, the fact that there is actually a new, here's the fucking clever thing, okay? Here's the clever thing. The new stuff that they're getting in NullSec from the mercenary dens has to be turned into Zarzak, which means they still need Zarzak. They still need it for some purpose, to exploit it for their resources. But it's not going to be with 100-man fleets. It's going to be just people trying to cash in, right? Which means they've actually flipped the script on this. Now, instead of the fact that you can use our stuff without us even liking it, now you need our structure. You could actually just start, like, the idea of like just camping out and killing people that come in to try to turn in their stuff, perfectly valid activity to do in Zarzak now. So I find it really interesting that NullSec will still need to access Zarzak, which will make some places in NullSec easier to use than other places in NullSec, by the way. But yeah. Do you think it's worth it to feed Zarzak market? Would people buy stuff there? So, I mean, it's hard for me to. I would, but I will say that like before Emanation Lock, when I went into Zarzak, I'd be sad. There'd be like 4 people, and 3 of them, like two of them were clearly alts of each other. But I'm looking. There's 10 people in Zarzak right now, which is still not that much. But I think that Zarzak also has a bit more churn than a lot of other locations. My point is, I don't know yet. Like I think that Zarzak is now growing. I think that if the more the Zarzak market is effective, like the more that when we were standing up the Dodixie market, or like when I was talking to my guys about wanting to bring back the Dodixie market, you know, they were very focused on finding what was profitable. And I was very focused on finding what was missing. Because the problem is that if I go to into the station and I open up my fit and I hit buy all and I cannot then hit buy and fit, you failed. I'm going to go somewhere else to fit my ship and not try that again for a while, probably, right? Like, this was a very true with like Dodixie, right? If you can't just hit fit all and get all of the modules you need, chances are you're just going to learn to go to Jita, right? You're not going to buy a few things in Dodixie, probably for a premium, and then go and get like the remaining pieces from Dodixie and bring them in. That doesn't make any sense. So it isn't even about whether or not everything's a good deal or a bad deal or whatever. It's about how functional is the market. How many different fits that people use can you just hit fit and buy everything that you need? The outer systems would be too heavily camped because of the hauling. It is a problem with the fact that it's hard to get things in because you can't bring freighters or whatever. Jita should be more expensive than other trade hubs, and not necessarily. So the reason why Jita isn't more expensive than other trade hubs is because most of the other trade hubs are filled by buying things in Jita and then hauling them to the market. The other stores markets are closer to like quickie marts, convenience stores, than big block stores. Seeding is about assurance over profit. Yeah, it's critical for us indie guys in null. Yeah, exactly. Like the point is coverage. And that's a tricky thing because you got to realize like, so there's the Tech 2 modules, obviously, but then there's the metas, and you got to know which metas people end up using, like micro warp drive, enduring versus compact. Enduring is technically better most of the time, but people still use not compact, restrained. Enduring versus restrained. Restrained is better than enduring, but people still use enduring. Everywhere else in Eve is a bodega. Yeah, okay. Right. Jita's Costco is probably a good one. I wouldn't even say, well, yeah, I guess Costco's a pretty good. It's the God, there's a word for like the place that people buy, like stores can buy from them. Retail outlet? No. Like the people that, I don't know, never, wholesalers. There you go. Thank you. Wholesalers. All right. So what I think is going on, like what's obvious with the skyhooks is that the walls are going back up, right? The big thing, like our attitude about the change to the skyhook was like, oh my God, they gave up on it or whatever. But I think that we got to remember like what the whole point of Equinox was in the first place, right? In the end, nullsec needs to be a place worth living in. And there's a tricky thing that I like to call get to do versus have to do. When we have moons and we mine the moons, when it's popular, it gets mined out really quick, and people complain that we don't have more moons. But if you keep adding moons, eventually you hit a point where now either there's a dip in play or you overextend a little bit too much, and now there are rocks, and there are people that are mining it, not because they're excited about the opportunity or whatever, but because they're there and they need to be mined, and they drudgingly do it. It switches from something that they get to do. Hey guys, we've got mining fleets, to something we have to do. Guys, we got to get these rocks finished, right? And that is a very critical thing when it comes to video games, because people tend to not do what they don't want to do, right? Especially, like, why would I do why would I drudge? Why would it harbors resentment and bad feelings and whatnot. So the problem is, and this is something I was concerned about with Equinox from the beginning, the question is, did they make nullsec a more exciting place to live, or did they add in more busy work that people have to do? And unfortunately, it seems incredibly clear, even under the best of scenarios, the answer is the latter. Now, obviously, it had a bunch of problems with balancing and all that stuff. They've been working on that. There's a whole thing about how you want to start low and ratchet your way up until you hit the sweet spot, because nobody likes nerfs. There's a bunch of stuff with that, whatever. But how does this relate to skyhooks? Well, skyhooks, ultimately speaking, skyhooks are supposed to be something that nullsec want to have, right? And if every skyhook is just another way for people to annoy you, not even do damage, just annoy you, then you've actually made living in nullsec worse. And that's bad. So it makes sense for CCP to be like, you know what? We focused a lot on what people can do to nullsec. Again, remember what I was just saying about Zarzak, right? It's the idea that people from the outside of it exploiting it to their own ends at the expense of those who live in that space. And that is what it's all been about, right? It was that way in Scarcity. It's what the ESS was about. It's what needlejack filaments are about. It's what nullsec complains about. So when you bring them their new thing, and it's just more of that, why would they be happy? So what do you do about that? Ultimately, it should be mostly a nullsec thing. And I think that this makes it that. Now, there is, we can look, actually. We can see they've actually done something pretty cool. On the map, you can actually see, how many times am I going to say actually? You can see skyhooks that are vulnerable on the map. So not only can you open up the agency and do it, but you can get a visible representation of where things are and see what's going on. Now, I don't know if it's easy to know how long it's going to be open still, but the point is that, we can see that in any given area of space, there's at least a few. And as skyhooks become more popular, as we noticed as we were going through nullsec, there's a whole lot of skyhooks, especially, or there's a whole lot of planets, especially ice and lava planets, that don't have skyhooks on them. So as that increases, there will be more of these skyhooks potentially to raid, but it's not something that you can just do over and over and over again, force somebody to react to it, because otherwise you're just going to keep ruining their day, whatnot. It still allows for people to raid in and get something out of it without turning it into the biggest pain in the ass since Intosis links for nullsec players. And I think that the fact that the mercenary dens again reinforce this, right? These are for the people that live in the space. They need things to do. They need to engage with it. They need to feel like they belong to something and that it is giving them something. And we need to be able to just respect that. Yes, Goon Swarm is moving to Tenerife. Correct. So yeah, I mean, do I think that 3 days is too long? Yes. Especially with 1 hour. I think it would be more interesting if it was, you know, I think that there's definitely some balance to be done, but I can definitely see why we need to change the way that we think about these features. This isn't, the Skyhooks isn't for us, per se. And passive income for null blocks was a big part of the fuel that made wars work. The goons are moving right now, arguably because of the fact that the new space is is better for them in different ways, right? So the return of passive income isn't just necessarily good, but it might be essential to make space feel worth fighting for on an empire level. I think it's a constant tug of war between null be fun and null has to maintain control over their space. I agree with you. I don't think that this. I think that this is part of that balance. I think that I think that this is part of that tug of war. It certainly is not null is only fun. I think if my prediction about the Atavum and the ability for nullsec to just shut down a system for a while so that way they can rat in peace, that might be going a little bit too far. But just having only some of your skyhooks vulnerable at any given time, skyhook it's need to be dead space. I don't like that. Well, the problem is that both sides can use that fact that it's not dead space to good effect. I like the idea of like a Sino jammer more than a dead space, by dead space specifically. I do think about the wormholers. The wormholers that will now have a harder time rolling their hole to get some stuff to run their Metanox. But overall, I think that, like, the Skyhook change and the things coming in Revenant for nullsec, like the new complex, are really about giving the people that live in nullsec something to do that they want to do. And I think that that's important. Is it really even worth running a Metanox in a wormhole? Can be. The thing is that R4 is good because it's used in building battleships and other stuff like that. I missed the economic podcasts. My economic podcast? Because Oz still does his. So it's useful to do R4 reactions in wormhole space, because wormhole space is one of the places you can do R4 reactions. Yeah, I think Oz is even working for or running for CSM. And working for CSM, I think, right? I think. I don't know. Too much going on. So the idea that they can build it within, like, the problem is mining the R4 is the dangerous part in wormhole space. It's not worth it to mine it. But if you have a Metanox drill, just drilling it up, it could very well be useful just for the sake of, like, internal relying only on your own stuff. Oz is CSM 8, yeah. 18, yeah. In terms of ISK space, yeah, well, the thing is that this ISK faucet that they've added is a new thing, which is important, because, like, I don't know if Moongoo is even a good example, because this is kind of just Moongoo 2.0, right? Meh. I guess one thing that they can do is just continue to put in new uses for lava and ice. Yeah, I mean, Mungu 2.0 is, I mean, I think that that's what it is. That's what it is. But that's the thing, is that passive moon mining was bad for miners because miners weren't respected because it wasn't worth it compared to passive moon mining. But at the same time, like, that passive income was what alliances fought over. The Deathless Site Generators is new content, though. That's true. That's a new site. Also, I mean, like, the 2 new ships and the new weapon system is huge, right? So, like, that can be a big one. I don't know. Now that I've said that, I think about, like, into the Abyss, right? The expansion that introduced the Triglavians. We had a new weapon system with 4? I want to say 4, maybe 5 different ships, and the entirety of the Abyss added. So I don't know if a new crab beacon is the equivalent of the entirety of the Abyss, but we also have the new Skinner stuff, which is a big deal, and maybe some other stuff we haven't heard of yet, but not like major stuff. So, although, I mean, we really, here's actually what my prediction is about this, okay? I am not sure if whatever is decloaking here is going to be part of the expansion's release, right? Fighting Drifters will be new content. I agree. That stuff hasn't been talked about at all. So either it's a missing piece or this story is playing out slightly slower than we think, right? You know, a lot of times, I mean, let's just put it this way. 2 years ago, I predicted Deathless ships because I saw that Deathless had Mimitar and Kaldari people working together, right? So they were clearly working towards that, but it took them a long time to get there. Like, it takes longer for these things to roll out. You know, time passes in real time, right? So it could very well be that whatever it is isn't fully activated by next month, but it could be something that comes in the month or two after, because, you know, Revenant expansion is the entire 6-month cycle. So it could go either way. But hopefully we'll have more information about that on Thursday. Let's see. I feel like I had one more thing, at least one more thing I wanted to talk about. Oh, right. So, since we're talking about what's coming up, we're talking about new information, we're talking about speculation, let's talk where is it? Stop. All right. About Vanguard. Hold on. Speaking of dank leaks. There we go. We have... Last we checked in with this, we were looking at the connections to Eve and the more technical stuff with that. However, they have been showing off quite a bit of new stuff, so let's go ahead and look at it. The first and foremost is they've got the 2 different new maps, which are... what was their names? So the monsoon on Solstice is going to be named Maelstrom, and the Carrion, which is the first map that we did with the big wreckage of the bowhead, is going to be named Aftermath when it's in the daytime. So we have a couple of clips. You can see, ooh, pretty lightning effects. And then there's this one. Captured orbital cannon. Oh, hold on. You can't hear it, but it just shot. And it shot again. Look at the shooting. Oh. Oh, Oh. That's pretty cool. So, hold on. You got to remember, this is all placeholder graphics and stuff. So, this isn't what it's going to look like in the end. It's just about functionality. What about eFrontier? Don't know anything new about that. I talked about it the other day. All right. Speaking of getting rid of stand-in graphics, goodbye banana hello cutting tool. You can see, actually in a video down below, that right now we have this really weird, like, yellow stand-in graphic for the mining laser. So they are showing off the new the new thing called the cutting tool, which is basically what the mining laser is transformed into. And we've got some screenshots for that. Next, customizing your cutting tool. Your cutting tool uses mining crystals, each tuned to a specific frequency that are most effective for cutting specific materials. Players need to experiment with these crystals through trial and error to find the right one for the job. Switching between crystal types is like swapping ammunition in a weapon. You can cycle through them to see which crystal works best for a particular material. Using the wrong crystal slows the progress, but the correct crystal will allow for faster, more efficient cutting. Crystals have limited durability, and once depleted, they must be replaced. Crystals cannot be repaired. Planet-side gameplay would be a good format for FPS EVE game. Yeah, I mean, I agree, but that's, yeah. Hey, Stoic, thank you so much for those 10 gifted subs. On behalf of, let's see, Peck and Mix, Ragtag Pro, Satonia, Daniel Font, Ika Warazuchan, Vince Watson, David Maskell, Patrick Price, Cynosis, and Vore Dawn Shadow. Thank you so much. And of course, for supporting the stream. It does a world of good. Thank you very much. Puppies are expensive, as it turns out. Did you know that? Puppies are expensive. All right, but back into this. Mining minigame. The cutting tool introduces a simple strategic element to mining, crafting the correct crystal to use for each material. Make sure you get yeah, I did. I got the puppy care plan. Using the right crystal rewards blah blah blah. Sorry. And may incur potential penalties. Interesting. Furthermore, oh, there's a picture. Now this is the old mining laser, obviously, but this is showing the new functionality. Well, I can actually turn on the sound for this one. Just sounds the same as it did before, though. That's him switching crystals. Oh, and so that one was a lot faster, it seems. I just had to check to make sure I didn't restart the video. I guess that makes sense. So yeah. I think we get it. Mining. Node layers and visual feedback. When mining resource nodes, players must cut through layers of material using the correct crystal type to speed up the process. Visual feedback such as crack or heat effects will show how well the crystal is working. However, the process is more about experimenting with different crystals. If the wrong crystal is used, the cutting will take longer, encouraging players to switch crystals until they find the right one. So that must be what we're seeing here, is that like this is layers of stone, basically. Deep core mining. Yeah, kind of. So each crystal has a limited lifespan, but using the wrong one slows progress rather than depleting it faster. Crystals must be replaced when depleted. Yield enhances the amount of resources collected from nodes. Oh, sorry. The chipsets can be added to the cutting tool to improve the efficiency. Regardless of which crystal is being used, these chipsets provide benefits such as durability. I assume that this is if you use the chipset, this was true. Yield will increase the yield. Speed shortens the cutting time. The idea is with these customization offers the player flexibility depending on their playstyle, whether they prefer efficient resource gathering, faster gameplay, or balance of both. Though the cutting tool is not designed for combat, it can deal minor damage to characters. However, in the upcoming release, the feedback for damaging characters might be rudimentary. Expect a more developed combat feedback system in a future update. So yeah, and we got some pictures of some crisp chips. There's more, I think, right? Evolution of combat. Weapons. Before designing any weapon in Vanguard, we ask the same 3 core questions. Who made it? What does it do? How will it be used? Who made it? Every weapon in Vanguard has been manufactured by a faction or empire within New Eden, each with its own distinct culture and technological signatures. Whether a weapon is sleek or precise or heavy or brutal, its origins will influence its visual style and the materials used. What does it do? Weapons are designed with a specific purpose in mind, whether it's delivering precision strikes or providing heavy firepower. Once we understand the function of a weapon, we assign it with the appropriate world manufacturer. Just as with the real world, different corporations specialize in different methods of construction. How will it be used? Weapons design go beyond aesthetics. Ergonomics and player feedback are critical. Elements like positioning of charging handles or magazine placements must align with how players handle them in combat, etc., etc. So we've got some ideas of different weapon systems. We still have yet to see, all they've shown us so far, all we've actually gotten so far is the ability to customize the weapons that we do have, or like as in like the chip set in the one weapon that we do have. But they have said that the next Vanguard test is going to be the biggest update that they've had so far. So maybe we'll get, this is actually an interesting one. The idea of like an extra arm for like an engineer, maybe. All right. Drones in Vanguards are autonomous robots that fulfill a variety of roles and tasks. Not all drones are designed for combat. Many do not pose a significant threat to Vanguard or NPCs. Their modular nature allows for extensive customization, enabling them to serve different functions depending on the variant. Most drones are airborne, maneuvering easily in 3D space, which presents a unique challenge for players, especially when engaging small and agile drones. The diversity of drone sizes and shapes also mean that combat strategies must adapt accordingly. Sometimes evading drones is just as critical as engaging them. Each drone variant in Vanguard is built with a unique purpose, requiring players to adapt their strategies when encountering them, whether drones are scouting for targets, protecting key assets, or deploying reinforcements. Players must also always consider their role and threat level. Intended player experience. Drones in Vanguard offer a range of challenges, from their aerial mobility to their varied capabilities. Players must take in a different approach when depending on the drone's vertical positioning and modular design. Drones also invoke different emotional responses depending on whether they are aligned with, against, or agnostic towards the player. Evoke different emotional responses. Weird. Kind of a strange way of putting that. And then here's a picture of a drone. Militia. The militias are an organized group of survivors native to Solstice and other habitable planets. They act as a resistance force, primarily using ambush tactics to combat occupying forces. Despite being low-tech compared to other factions, they use scavenge weaponry and resources to become a significant threat to Vanguard and other AI-controlled enemies. Players should expect sudden ambushes from militia, which create reactionary combat scenarios. The ambush slow players down and force them to become more methodical in navigating the map, being mindful of militia traps or squads lurking nearby. Militia combat should feel unpredictable and not entirely without warning. Players can detect the presence of militia through subtle environmental cues like chatter, clicks, and whistles. This gives players some control over avoiding traps while still keeping the pressure on. Encounters. Trap ambush exclusively targets Vanguard players with tripwire traps. Once triggered, militia squads quickly appear to engage the players. Roaming ambush. Militia squads roam the map, attacking both players and NPC squads. Camp ambush. Militias lie in wait in strategic locations, initiating scripted set-piece encounters. And trapdoor ambush, triggered by players or objects like grenades. Like grenades? Tell me more. These ambushes send Rogue, a militia variant, to spring a high-damage melee attack. Post-combat. If militia wins a fight, they might be seen looting death boxes in the area before retreating. Militia who successfully loot items will drop them upon death if killed later. Militia variants. Warrior. Standard enemy wielding stolen Core 80s. Uses knives in close proximity. Watcher. Tracks target with low fire rate rifles and maintains a safe distance. Rogue. Fast-moving melee attackers who charges recklessly towards players. And Grenadier. Throws explosives from behind cover, advancing on pinned targets. Situational awareness. Players need to rely on subtle clues, military presence, ambience, whispers, clicks, and subtle sounds. Militia war cry. Loud war cry signals an impending attack. Unique footsteps. Militias have a distinct sound profile. Militia often drop munitions, components, and scrap. More valuable resources can be found as uncommon loot, but players may also recover items looted by militia during their ambushes. So with that, that's it, I think. Yeah, great. So, maybe this is a militiaman. That's what those pictures are. So I think that a lot of this is suggesting things that we might see this, at least of the bit of it, in the next Vanguard playtest. That said, yeah, so the November 28th to December 9th playtest, I should say. I wonder, they talk about how weapons have a specific purpose in mind, but the Chris chips that we got before, or the chipsets rather, change the weapon. You could make a weapon everything from a 3-round burst to a sniper rifle. So it makes me wonder, how much customization the chipsets are going to have once you have actual weapons to choose from. Did I talk about the fitting part? What fitting part? I don't see a fitting part. I haven't seen anything about the fitting part. Yeah, so I think that this is going to be interesting. And the other thing is that we're not getting a new map this next playtest, so hopefully that means we're going to get more of the actual gameplay mechanics. The thing is that, as of right now, all of this sounds good. It doesn't quite sound like it's hard to see where we transition from what we had to this. But I'm pretty excited about it. And again, when it comes to the graphics of this and whatnot, in development, you want to get the functionality going and not be reliant on whether or not it's visually stunning every single time. And in fact, actually, here's the thing about this. Okay? Where is it? You might think this looks bad. Right? You might think this looks kind of corny with the green line and the yellow area and all that stuff. But you know what you don't think, or you shouldn't think? That this is the finished product, right? Sometimes one of the things that people have kind of started doing in game development is it used to be that you wanted to make it as good as possible when you're showing stuff off early. But the problem is is that early assets are often just not going to be as good as the finished product. So you have like these rushed good enough products. But then when you see it, when somebody else sees it, they think that that's what you want it to be, right? So if you just go and get like a free asset somewhere and you throw it in there and it looks good enough, they might actually think that that's what it's supposed to look like and therefore think it looks bad. But if you make it so obviously a stand-in graphic, then people know that they're not looking at a finished product and usually don't judge it in the same way. So, yeah. Oh, I've seen pictures about modifying suit with different modules. Yes, I think we talked about that the last time we talked about Vanguard. But yeah, I just wanted to catch you guys back up, make sure that you're that everybody, you know, the things that they've been announcing on the Vanguard Discord, so we know what we're expecting or what they're at least talking about. But I think, with all that said, you think Eve Galactic is going to look better at launch? No. I mean, maybe some of the graphics, but like, it's too close. It's technically released in some places. I don't see it. Like, I think that what we have is I think that like maybe some of the resource balancing and progression balancing and all that stuff might get a final tweak before they release. But I don't think that they're like a week before the release of the thing, they're going to be like, and here's a complete different overhaul of looks. I wouldn't get your hopes up. With that said, I've been Astronauthy. I've been playing this game since 2010, talking about it since 2012, and I'm here to put even to context for you, my fellow Empyreans. Thank you guys so much for checking this out. Thank you for hanging out, liking the stream, sharing it with your friends, because that is how we get this information out there, make a more knowledgeable player base. If this stream was too short for you, then I recommend, if you have not done it already, you should check out yesterday's stream. It was a lot of fun, and, you know, it's crazy. They talk about streamer luck, but every once in a while, actually more often for me than I deserve, there's just a run that just goes flawlessly, allows me to demonstrate all the things I want to demonstrate, and do so in exactly the right amount of time. And yesterday's Yeet exploration video fits that bill. I was very happy about that. Yeah, Stoic07, thank you for that membership, as well as the 10 others you gave earlier. Yeah, like the stream. There's more there. We will be back on Thursday to discuss CSM choices. CSM voting starts then. Go Dutch. I will be telling you who to vote for. I will be telling you who besides Dutch Gunner you should vote for, or as well as Dutch Gunner you should vote for, whichever you want to think about. No. So once again, as I said before, go ahead and leave any comments in the down below of anybody who I should consider for CSM. I hope I don't get trolled by 50,000 people telling me that I should consider Alcoholic Satan. But I've been Astronauthy, the voice of New Eden. Until next time, I'll see you in space. Buy merch like this one. Check this out. It's cool. I like it. All right. God damn it, that's what it was. People leave already? People leave already? No. To be honest with you guys, sorry, one last little thing. To be honest with you guys, yeah, I am waiting for more logs. There are the logs from Yosef. So I will give you a little bit of a coverage of it. So, oh, there's more of them showing up. I need people to get out there, run these sites, get more of these data fragments, and bring them together. You know what? We can do it now. People left. That's on them. Never leave my stream. All right. So let's see. Actually, you know what? I'm going to piece these all together. We'll talk about them on Thursday, too. In the meantime, go out there, do relic sites, try to find them. If you get them, go to Air Talker Research Consortium and hand them in. All right? Cool. I'll see you tomorrow. Or I'll see you on Thursday.
Bring on the wrecking machine. For every city